Hey guys, Destiny Owen and Joe Reynolds here with Cure4, your leading health experts. We want to talk a little bit about disease today. So, obviously, there's tons of it being talked about on the news, so we thought we would bring you some education on where disease actually started.
Yeah, so like a little over 100 years ago, basically the biggest issue that mankind faced was infectious diseases. And the root cause of that was basically poor water sanitation, sewage sanitation, and nutrition deficiency because of famine. And that was realistically what caused the biggest health ailment back in over 100 years ago.
That's actually quite interesting, being that going to nursing school, learning about aseptic disease, or what means when you go in somewhere to or hospital to get better and you actually leave with a new disease. So that's quite interesting to know that that's where that started. Or
Yeah, well, now obviously, what's the biggest concern nowadays is non-communicable disease.
what's that?
Well, non-communicable disease, and they kind of hide it behind the real word, which is basically a man-made disease caused by environmental factors, and that's what we're facing with now. And sadly,
So it's something that you acquire, not something you're born with.
yeah, sadly, the way it's the actual perfect term is we earn that disease. Sadly,
I don't like that term.
no.
We earn it, but not trying to.
No, and it's purely down to environmental factors: stress, mineral deficient food, toxins on the food, non-organic foods, packaged processed foods, vaccines, medications, any toxin you can imagine that we're putting in our body, even down to water, chloride, fluoride, heavy metal toxicity. And the fact is that many people are on medications. Obviously, that medication gets into the sewers. It can't be cleaned out by the sewage company, and we're ingesting that as well.
But okay, so do you think? I don't know. I feel like there's like a big, difference in opinion when it comes to whether or not disease is getting more abundant.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
What do you feel about
So
that?
if you go to any doctor and you say, why is it seem like everyone's getting sicker? Why is cancer on the rise? Just from the year 1971 Nixon, cancer's gone up 300%. He declared war on cancer in 1971. Since that time, there's been nearly $1 trillion spent on cancer research, and everyone's getting sicker and sicker. Now, if you talk to an MD doctor, they're going to say it's not that it's getting worse, it's literally just better diagnosed. But, if you look at the stats, it's not the case. Autism is increasing at 6% per year, and by the year 2030, 80% of the world population is going to be sick. That's up from our current 60% in adults and 54% in kids.
Of course, being if we don't make some changes,
Yes.
right?
I mean, this is all preventable. It's just the education, sadly, isn't out there, and that's what we're trying to do at Cure4, is trying to help educate people on it.
Yes. So bringing it back just a little bit more, from the beginning of disease, Hippocrates,
Yeah.
right? Wasn't that?
Oh yeah,
sort
that's
of
great.
like-
So if you can go back as far as the Egyptians, and disease has always been studied and not acknowledged, but for instance, there was Egyptian kings back in the day that died of a tooth infection at 92 years old. So that's just a great example that people lived into their 80s and 90s 4,000 years ago, where obviously
without
we're
medications and
yeah.
and all of that.
And it's just a prime example. Hippocrates, like you said, Destiny, is Hippocratic oath. He knew that disease stemmed from the gut, and he healed all forms of disease 2,500 years ago. And that's why we had the Hippocratic oath up until literally the last 50 years when it changed.
Okay, and so if you could give a couple of health tips to try and prevent this from happening, what would it be?
Yeah, it's literally all down to lifestyle changes. So stress is something we're exposed to that's really bad in this world, and that's physical, emotional, and chemical. And this is obviously a very
So
detailed.
physical being
The body, the human
body.
structure, yeah, and that'll be chemical being the chemicals that come into the body through water, non-organic foods, medications,
and
vaccines.
then emotion.
And emotional could be, you're having trouble with your spouse, your kids, a divorce, a loss of a job,
And that in itself can create disease.
Yeah. So basically it's about controlling what you can and also taking certain steps to ensure that you're taking in a 70% plant-based diet. Any meat and dairy products, it's raw or healthy animals, organic, lightly cooked. Supplementation, because sadly the earth is depleted of minerals, which is essential for health. So supplementation is important.
Exactly. We're all very, very, a lot of us are very deficient. There's different studies around, but some say we are all mineral deficient now, which I somewhat believe because of the fact that we don't let our foods reseason or go through the seasons so that they can be remineralized.
Yeah,
right?
Sadly they're putting chemicals on to draw out as much of the minerals out of the ground as possible. They're harvesting the foods too early, and then it's sitting in transit or on the shelf too long. And then sadly on top of that, people are overcooking it. So there's all these
And what
ailments.
does the overcooking do?
Overcooking basically destroys the living bacteria and enzymes on the food.
Which affects us how though?
Well, we're 90% bacteria, and we need enzymes to help us break down them foods. And the bacteria and the enzymes in our gut help us digest, break down the foods, and also create vitamins from said food. And the problem is if the food's devoid in that, and one of the worst things is overcooking. 118, 120 degrees is the ultimate temperature. And if you do boil or steam vegetables, it's ideal to keep the water because that's where a lot of the minerals end up.
Yeah. So even I know that's something that I've incorporated. So after done eating, if you have some leftover broth or whatever it is, don't just throw it away. That's the gold. So, now I'm always drinking it. As a matter of fact, sometimes if I'm full, I'll just drink that. And then, because I know that that's where everything is kind of residing. So if you're steaming your foods and all that fun stuff, then you may want to think twice about it. Sorry to ruin that for you. But bringing it back to from where disease is now compared to where it was, what do you see as far as ratios, and what is the difference now?
Yeah, the scary thing is, if you do the real study, you can go back to the 70s and you'll see that 1 in 10,000 kids had autism back in the 70s. That number now is sadly 1 in 18. They estimate by the year 2030, if it continues at 6% per year, we're going to see more autistic kids than non-autistic, so over 50%. 54% of children, like we say, has a chronic disease, 60% of adults. And this number's only going to get worse, and it's purely just down to we just got to take our health back ourselves, take responsibility, and implement daily regimens and routines, healthy routines, to help prevent, which is what everyone's talking about. It's a genetic illness or there's a genetic weakness, and it's
but there are environmental factors.
Yeah, environmental factors that change the genes, epigenetics, and that basically means we can turn on or turn off good or bad genes simply through our lifestyle.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when I say, even when I say as far as medicine now, so antibiotics, do you feel like that's helping or hurting or?
Yep, okay, so antibiotics, penicillin, originally Alex Fleming discovered it, amazing, saved millions of lives, but when he actually discovered this, which is actually just a toxic mold, and it kills bacteria. The only problem is it kills all bacteria, good and bad.
Yeah.
And he even said, bacteria is, because he was actually a bacteria expert. So he said, bacteria evolves, bacteria will grow, bacteria will get stronger. And that's sadly why we're looking at statistics of where's the most clean, hygienic place in the world, a hospital. And what's the most common issue in a hospital is bacterial infections, because you've got antibacterial immune
that
bacteria.
Totally makes sense. Wow, that really does make sense. So that's totally interesting. So also to think about that in perspective of probiotics, because what probiotics do is bring what's called your normal flora, or the amount of gut bacteria that you have. It basically brings it up to par, right, to deal with all the other bacteria. So we're just a bunch of fighting bacteria. But I feel like a lot of people don't understand probiotics, prebiotics.
Okay, so stuff. We're 90% bacteria, 10% human cells, 50% of that 90% is viral, which is why, you know, the coronavirus and things like that aren't anything really to worry about, because we are used to being and dealing with viruses. The probiotics repopulate the bacteria that's destroyed by, say, antibiotics, vaccinations, medications, non-organic foods, all the chemicals.
That's why they say to take probiotics after taking antibiotics.
Yes, because it repopulates what the antibiotics kill. Now, if you have a couple of courses of antibiotics in your life, it could be life-saving. Like if you have an appendicitis, that would be an ideal time, but it's not going to work if you've had 6, 7, 8 courses throughout your lifetime. So that's the great thing about probiotics, is that we educate people on how to get the best sources, how to make their own, and that will repopulate. Prebiotics is feeding the current bacteria that you have in your stomach, so you're actually making them, you're increasing the volume and making them stronger, basically.
Okay, so that would be for somebody that's like lower acidic?
It'd be like me and you, you know, we would take a prebiotic more than we would a probiotic because we want to increase and feed, because it's like an ecosystem. You know, look at the Yellowstone Park. When they took the wolves out, that made the deer population overgrow. Then they ate too much grass, and they affected the rivers in the Yellowstone Park. It was a perfect ecosystem before the wolves were taken out. And that's what's happening is when you take a course of antibiotics, you're killing off multiple different bacteria, allowing
including ones
bad
that you need
to overgrow and losing ones that you need. So it's about getting that harmony back, which takes a few months, but you can get it back into harmony.
And that is called homeostasis, which means that all our body is always trying to do is stay level. So whatever you do to throw yourself out of balance, your body is going to fight to bring it back. And that's why stressors, whether emotional, physical, chemical, really do create disease. So maybe take a minute to sit down and really think about in your life where you may be accumulating these factors and making yourself ill.
Yeah, just to finish up, you know, it's a great point you just touched on there. Allostasis is the opposite. That's the current medical pharmaceutical world that we know. They're constantly trying to force your body into homeostasis. So when your body wants to do something, always reacting or adapting to
like high cholesterol, high blood pressure.
If you need high cholesterol for whatever reason, that you've got tissue damage or you're in a stressed state, or if you need, you know, like high blood pressure as well, you know, we need it when we need it, you know, and then if they force it down with medication, that's not solving the root cause. That's why holistic is what we do, and we help the body find its natural base, assisting it, not forcing it.
Absolutely. And that protocol looks different for every single person. And so that's why we've dedicated our lives to creating what works specifically for an individual, because every single plan looks so different. There are no two people that are the same. So so we just wanted to share a little bit of our education with you about the history of disease, and how we're planning to really revolutionize health, period, and not let this happen. I do not want to see my children's, etc., living in this way. So these are really important things to learn and also teach your family.
Yep, we educate you on how to take your health back.
See you soon.